Welcome to the ClearSlide webinar, Solve the Prospect Interaction Gap for Sales. We'll get started in a couple minutes, and to start, we'll conduct a quick sound check. So if you can hear me, please click Ask a Question and type Yes. We'll take 10 seconds to collect your responses. Presenting today from ClearSlide, we have Chris Badger, Senior Director of Partnership Alliances, and David Zahora, Senior Sales Engineer. Feel free to send questions to us throughout the presentation, and our speakers will answer them at the end. And please be sure to set your view to full screen mode by clicking on the icon in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. So Chris and David, I'll let you take it from here.
All right. Thank you, Kathy. Good morning. Good afternoon, everyone. Thrilled you could join our webinar today. And just to frame our agenda, the session will be at the most 45 minutes. I'll start off by framing a few PowerPoint slides about the challenge around prospect interaction gaps and its impact to organizations. We'll talk a little bit about ClearSlide and what some of our customers are doing to solve that problem. But then we'll have my esteemed colleague, David Zahora, actually go through a demonstration of our ClearSlide for Salesforce product, and we'll leave about 5 to 10 minutes at the end for Q&A. So that is the agenda. Now, before I start my slides, I think the premise for the webinar is that every organization out there has probably spent a fair amount of money investing in sales tools these days. I'm sure all of you have a CRM system. But despite these investments, we hear a lot about how customers are very challenged with how their reps really interact directly with prospects and get insight about what's going on in that sales cycle. And so to really sort of frame for all of you some of the analyst data in terms of how big this problem is, I've got a couple slides that frame some statistics that I think are pretty interesting. They're illuminating about how big this challenge is these days. So here's one: 94% of sales leaders lack confidence in their activity data. So this is coming from Forrester Research in its a briefing they did a year or two ago with a lot of their organizations that they deal with. So that's pretty staggering. Obviously, activity data is pretty critical for helping a sales organization know what's really going on from a field perspective. So here's another one: 65% of salespeople and their time spent is on non-selling activity. This is data coming from Accenture and CSO Insights. We'd like to think our sales organizations are all, for the most part, selling, but a number like this is pretty shocking in terms of the distractions, if you will, that go on for what salespeople today have to go through. Here's another one: 70% of sales reps don't validate prospect interest during the sales cycle. What this means is that probably quite a few sales organizations are having the reps investing in opportunities that ultimately aren't that interested in the product. So the point being that they may be misusing their time. This is one of the other challenges I'm sure all of you face, is really trying to drive greater productivity with your sales organization, really focusing on the right deals at the right time. And that's a hard challenge, and we'll touch on that a little bit later in this webinar. Okay, my last statistic I'll throw out: 60% of the organizations surveyed by CSO Insights feel the lack of proper tools leads to lengthened sales cycles. Part of what we see going on these days is, to a degree, a lot of other sort of point solutions trying to help the sales team be efficient going through the sales cycle, and this almost backfires. Quite often there's a lack of coordination amongst the tools, and so obviously having sales cycles lengthen is not what anyone wants. You think you're investing in sales tools to shorten the sales cycle, so these are all sort of troubling trends. Okay, now to frame how we view the prospect or interaction gap a little bit more directly, our premise of this webinar is that this is a greater focus for what people need to think about in its digital selling era, to really focus in on getting high-quality prospect and customer insight. So let me drill into a CRM system. I personally have used CRM systems for probably 20 years, and they're fantastic systems. I'll pick on Salesforce, and we're a big partner with Salesforce. It's clearly the #1 market leader here. But most CRM systems really aren't designed to truly help that sales rep connect directly with a prospect and have a communication or make a pitch or try to close that deal. Some of that's done by email, granted, but today usually there's a combination of communication channels you've got to use to really connect directly with your prospects. And of course, it's becoming more and more challenging with prospects being so busy. So this is exactly sort of the conundrum or challenge that a lot of organizations have out there. Now, a lot of the market analyst firms are really starting to note that there's a newer opportunity to really solve this problem. And so very recently, one of the leading analyst firms, Gartner Research, came out with a report advocating the concept of a sales engagement platform. We were actually mentioned in this report, and in fact, we'd be happy to share copies of this report if any of you are interested. But the premise behind Jim Lundy, who's the lead researcher for Aragon, is that companies need to really tie together a lot of the aspects for what today is called a sales engagement platform. So you can see in this little graphic, really bringing together content management, communications, predictive analytics, and even the CRM integration. We're, of course, going to touch on that, but this is sort of a newer concept of really integrating all these together with your CRM system to drive greater efficiencies. Okay, I'm now going to introduce ClearSlide at a high level, and specifically our ClearSlide for Salesforce product. Dave will demonstrate this in a little bit more detail, but at least to introduce what it is that ClearSlide does, we start out by taking the digital content or media that typically a marketing group provides for its sales organization. This may be through either corporate marketing, it could be a field marketing organization, sometimes sales does it for itself, or sales operations team. But clearly, as companies are going after selling digitally, you probably have a variety of digital content types that are used by the salespeople. So what ClearSlide does is organize that to make it super simple for sales reps to communicate using that content through 3 communication channels. So email, over the phone and web, and then in person through mobile applications. Now, as prospects start interacting with the content, this could be through opening up an email and the content in the email, or it could be through a webinar similar to this, where you may have, 10 people joining a discussion about a proposal. All of the touches to that content actually provides a lot of insight. So in the top part of this graphic, the analytics is where we track and start to auto-log some of that customer touch that's going on, or the prospect engagement data. We push that back in the relevant objects in Salesforce so that when the prospect engagement data is mixed in with the native CRM data, you start to get insights about what's really going on in the sales cycle. So that's the bottom blue bar under the predictive title. You can start to be more recommending of what salespeople should be doing, whether it's a certain type of communication or content to use in a given sales stage. This helps the sales teams be a lot more efficient and productive. So at a high level, that's exactly what ClearSlide does, and especially with our integration with Salesforce. Okay, what I'm going to do now is switch gears and focus a little bit what markets we serve. We're actually a horizontal platform, and what I mean by that is we actually can apply to any industry or market. Obviously, we have a few very strong verticals shown here by online, technology, media and publishing, information and professional education. A lot of these industries are now starting to really heavily leverage digital media and content for how they sell. We're blessed with having some very demanding but recognized brands such as Google, Amazon, Comcast, Autodesk. These are all market-leading firms. Many of them have several thousand of users, and they deploy ClearSlide across their different sales group. It could be a sales development group, an inside sales team, an outside field-based team. We have components of our solution that works for all those different groups. Now, drilling into, okay, how exactly ClearSlide working with, for example, Salesforce benefits the sales reps. There's really three main benefits that our integration helps with. So the first is eliminating that proverbial manual data entry. Every sales rep hates entering data. It detracts from their selling time. It's kind of a pain in the butt. So the more that is automated, and we have an auto logging feature, which Dave will touch on, really keeps sales reps focusing on selling and the important start discussion that they're having with their prospects, and eliminates that data entry issue. Follow up faster, what we mean by that is through the integration right within Salesforce, we keep people staying within Salesforce. So it just makes it much easier to reach out to prospects, have a conversation right from within Salesforce with that prospect to drive that kind of productivity that people are looking for. By optimized deal qualification, what we're getting at is, especially with email, being able to get a sense for, okay, even if I've gotten a lead coming to me from marketing, is that prospect truly, really interested in my story or just sort of kicking the tires? And again, that dramatically affects whether that's an opportunity I should invest my time in. So Dave will show how we can really help out early in that funnel with reps determining, okay, which of these they should really pursue next. But switching gears, let's talk a little bit about sales leaders and how this integration can help sales leaders. So from a forecasting perspective, I cited earlier some statistics about sales leaders just lacking confidence in their field activity data. Quite often, sales leaders have committed or forecasted deals, any deal that's very late in the sales cycle. The engagement data that we provide really helps the sales leader assess and qualify the risk associated with if that deal is forecasted or committed. We provide dashboards, which Dave will touch on, that looks at, okay, how much engagement time has occurred for each of the deals that's now, late in the sales cycle. For the ones that have low engagement, those are probably ones you want to drill into and have a discussion with your sales rep just to find out, is this deal really warranted for being a forecasted deal? Or maybe you want to double check with, okay, did I have enough airtime with the key decision makers? These are all things that a sales leader can check in on. Capture insights from the field. What we mean by that is a lot of product and marketing groups would love to know, okay, how are you and your product and service faring against competition? So to be able to capture from the field perspective that feedback, when you run into a competitor, a sales rep runs into a competitor, how does that prospect talk about your product and service? What do they like or not like in the context of that competition? That's the kind of insight that really is valuable to help corporate do the right thing to increase your positioning. And lastly, a very common issue every sales organization deals with is high turnover with reps. So the ability to really capture the best practices of what your star reps are doing and the path they take to close deals, and to bring that back so that your new hires can model that behavior and therefore ramp quickly and be productive driving revenue. Those are all things that our application and the integration can help drive. So that just brings some of the benefits for sales leaders. Okay, the last couple parts I'm going to touch on are sharing 4 case studies of customers and the challenges they have, but really some of the key benefits that they were able to derive from this integration. So I'll start out with Comcast here, and like many companies, they really lack visibility into the customer engagement that a lot of other people are struggling with. And they also had a very large outside sales organization that was very mobile device-based, with tablets and smartphones. So with ClearSlide, now they were able to take, frankly, their corporate marketing approved content and have that accessible through the mobile devices. So that was a key capability that they brought to their field organization. in addition, they got a lot more insight about what's really going on with these field engagements to solve the problem that they had before. And as a result, they shortened their sales cycle 65%. So that was a pretty dramatic improvement for them. All right, Grovo is another customer that had a similar challenge with a lack of visibility into their customer engagement. So by using some of the digital media and content they had in their Salesforce integration, that really increased the sales rep productivity that they went through. But here's another area I want to drill into a little bit. In the lower right where it says insights-based stage-specific sales materials, what I'm getting at is that through the analytics that ClearSlide provides, Grovo was now starting to determine, okay, what content was truly helping a sales rep move the deal from one stage to the next. And so they were one of the first to really take advantage of what we call guided selling. How do you start to recommend the right steps or content that a sales rep should use to best help them get through the sales cycle efficiently? So I think that's really interesting. Okay, the next case study here is Starwood. You can imagine Starwood being a hotel chain. They have a completely different kind of sales cycle and challenge. So in their case, they have a lot of on-site visits that they have to conduct with a prospect. And you can imagine scheduling an on-site visit takes a while, and it really lengthens the sales cycle. So that was one of the sets of challenges they had. And what they found by using ClearSlide is now they could take really the kind of visuals about what a property might really does look like and bring that live to a customer so they don't actually have to go on site. So it really brought that digital selling element into the sales cycle a little bit more directly. So for them, they were able to shorten the sales cycle, but they also found they could increase the close rate by having these really rich visuals brought right to the prospect. Okay, and just wrapping up here, Summit Media, another ClearSlide customer. One of their biggest challenges was really leveraging this digital media content, especially video-based content. They're a PR agency, and so you can imagine that that's sort of their key fluency that they typically go through with their prospects, is talking through the sort of visual elements of what they can do for a firm. Video being obviously the biggest media type that companies often may struggle with. But again, they also really got to leverage the analytics around what content is being effective in the sales cycle, and we're able to drive a 20% increase in their sales productivity. So we're happy to share these case studies if any of you are interested, but I think it provides kind of a rich tapestry about different ways that customers take advantage of using a sales engagement platform to increase their productivity and really close that prospect interaction gap. Okay, I think it's time to actually see the product in action. So, Kathy, if you don't mind, let's turn it over to Dave.
All right, well, thank you, everyone. Thanks, Chris, for the great introduction, and I'll take it away in giving everyone kind of a real-life walkthrough of ClearSlide and Salesforce working together. So kind of first, as kind of a preamble before I start, what I'm going to do today is just walking you through the life cycle of a deal using Salesforce and ClearSlide together. We're going to hit up a multitude of different roles who might touch a deal during its complete life cycle, and we'll hit up multiple parts of the ClearSlide platform. Now, of course, this is not the only use case for these products being used together, but this is just one I think gives a pretty good high-level view of how things can sync up properly. Before we even hit up the Salesforce side, things always start in the ClearSlide side with content. Obviously, being a cloud-hosted product, one of the big advantages is that your content is up to date no matter where you access it from any product or device. So making sure that we have the right content for the teams to use is one of the paramount features of the ClearSlide product. One of the things that we'll see is that actually this whole process of working back and forth with Salesforce is going to help us optimize which content is actually the right piece of content to use in the right situation. We like to call that content Darwinism over here, but basically being able to see the results of sending out the right presentations or using the right presentations in meetings or using the right templates when emailing is all handled through ClearSlide and Salesforce working back together and getting that big data picture of which actions were successful and which ones weren't. But kicking off a deal in its proper life cycle, many organizations might use a marketing automation system like an Eloqua or Marketo or Pardot from Salesforce to basically generate what we call marketing qualified leads. And this is usually the first step at which a sales team would come into play and take these leads, which at least have some interest in your product, and try and figure out, well, which of these leads do we want to follow up with to try and get into our sales team's hands. And typically that process might come like this, that your sales development rep might come into Salesforce one day and have a new list of inbound leads produced by your marketing team, and it's their job to figure out which of these people do we pass on to our account executives. Well, using ClearSlide and Salesforce together, it's as simple as highlighting your leads list and just pressing the email pitch button, which will allow you to do a mail composition, a mail merge style sending. Now, each recipient will receive an individual email, and in fact, because it's a mail merge style, each one will seem like it was addressed to them. But as I mentioned before, this is the perfect time to discuss or to start using templated sending. So this was a break-in email to a bunch of new leads, so we're just going to select our break-in template, which has our marketing-approved piece of content ready, all of our nomenclature set up and pre-approved, and we're going to go ahead and have the options to choose what we want to do when we send this presentation over to our client. Now, one of the awesome powers of ClearSlide is because we're sending links to the presentation, not the physical document itself, you have complete control of the document even after it's been sent. So if you decide after on that you had sent the wrong piece of content, or you want to perhaps make sure that people can or cannot download it, you can always change that option even after it's been sent. Sending is simple as just determining exactly what you want to see, blasting out this blast. Now, this was a small blast here to 6 people, but what we'll see is that this can be done easily in larger numbers, 600 or even 6,000 people at a time. And why this is going to be valuable is that each person on this list is going to get an individual email sent to them. And on the Salesforce side, as Chris alluded to, we're automatically going to create a record on the Salesforce side for each person saying that an action was taken. Basically, we just made a customer-facing touch, and for that reason, Salesforce, being the CRM repository, is the perfect place to store that an action was made without the salesperson having to go in and log it themselves. As we can see, the entire body of the email is logged into Salesforce and is basically capturing that we just made a touch. Now, on the customer side, the recipient of this email, they have an email arrive in their inbox, just like as expected. This one diagrams to my Mr. Big Shot here. But what's going to end up happening on the Salesforce side is the second that that email was viewed, we're going to let you know that that email was viewed. Secondly, as soon as that email is actually opened by the recipient, 2 things are going to happen. First, as they receive this document and navigate through it, seeing all of your content as you were expecting, your rich content, your videos, or any of your animations that you want, on the Salesforce side, we are going to get notification that your content was viewed. But additionally, to the rep themselves, they're also going to get what's called a ClearSlide view alert. This is an email letting them know that someone is actively looking at their presentation right now. What we're going to see is that to the sales rep, this is a very important piece of information, because knowing that someone is actively viewing your document, and even more specifically what slides they're looking at, is going to give you a primer that they're due for a follow-up call. And in fact, if you give them a call in the next 30 minutes or so, your content will be top of mind and ready for them to receive your call, because you know they're interested, they've actually clicked your presentation. But back on the Salesforce side, when we're talking about just the development representative as a whole, since all of this data is being tracked into Salesforce, we've got some pretty interesting information that is actionable. When we go back to our original leads list here, and again, this was just a quick mailing to 6 people, all that data around who actually opened the email and who actually clicked the content is passed into Salesforce. So when it comes time to do what we might call a drip campaign, or basically taking actions based off of other actions, we can take this original break-in list and filter it down just saying, hey, only show me the people who have actually clicked the content. In this way, your development team is not going to waste time reaching out to clients who aren't interested. They're going to be able to take their original marketing list, qualify it based on the actual interactions of the customers, and say, these are the people who have actually clicked the links that we've sent. These are the customers who we want to follow up with because they've already shown the interest that they might want to follow up with you with more information. Now, when it comes time to do that next follow-up, that's where ClearSlide is obviously used as the next piece of engagement as well. Now, you might want to follow up with another email just to see exactly what they want to talk about, but let's say you just want to give them a cold call. Well, when that happens, you give them a ring, and as soon as you get them on that line, you can use the live pitching presentation ability of ClearSlide to show any of your content as well. Getting someone to be able to see content is as simple as reading off your viewer's link. Now, every user in ClearSlide has their own unique viewer's link. This is your private presentation portal. And being able to show someone content is as simple as reading this off on the phone to them. You got them on the line. Hey, do you have just 2 seconds? I want to walk you through a couple of data as a follow-up to what I sent you. Jump on horizonslides.com/tramirez and let me walk you through a proposal. Well, any of the content that you had previously uploaded into ClearSlide is at your fingertips, that as soon as you want to show them a particular use case or a document, well, you can just slide right through that, and whatever you are showing on this screen is presenting on through to your presentation slides here. If they start asking questions that weren't on this deck, well, no worries. Anything that you've uploaded previously is at your fingertips and ready for you to jump to. We like to term this as being audible ready, so that you never get caught being unprepared. As long as you have the document, you're able to show it to them and meet that criterion. When your presentation is done, you're going to go ahead and end your pitch, and you're going to put in some good notes. Had a great meeting, walked through products 1, 2, and 4. And who did you meet with? Well, we met with great Mr. Big Shot here. Since you just had another customer-facing meeting, and here what we're going to show is just quickly the ClearSlide analytics of exactly what you looked at and for how long, but since you made another customer-facing touch, yet again, it's another perfect time to log an activity into Salesforce. All of those meeting notes that you had entered are right there, waiting for you, so you don't have to go back. And at any point, you can drive right back into the ClearSlide system and see exactly what slides you showed and how engaged the customer was with what you were showing them. But again, since this was a meeting, this is like customer-facing touch, don't have the salespeople have to waste their effort in logging this into the right location or perhaps putting it in the wrong location. Let's have it automatically tracked right into Salesforce so that there's no loss of data. Now, typically this was done, in this case, online. I did a live pitch off my web link, but as Chris alluded to, this can be done in person as well. The ClearSlide Presenter app gives you all of this exact same functionality to be able to be on-site and in person, pull up any of your uploaded content and collateral, either online or offline, and as soon as you're done, the same behavior will happen. As soon as you just enter the meeting notes, it's going to log right back into Salesforce so that even your team in the field is pushing all this rich data around what they're doing right into Salesforce automatically without having to basically go back at the end of the day and try and remember all the things they presented. And, obviously for the individual team and the sales ops team, that's great. But what we're going to see here is not only just pushing that an action happened, but we're going to push an additional level of detail around what we like to term engagement. Now, the first step of engagement was like we showed with emails. Did someone open your email? Did they click your content? But we're actually going to drive a step deeper, which is how long did you have the other person on the line and paying attention? Now, this is a pretty big deal. Even if you had the best team in the world and they were logging their activities 100% perfectly, no one's going to log in and say, I had a 30-second call, or I had a 12-minute and 47-second call, or I had a 2-hour call. But really, when you think about it, that is the piece of information that's really important. As a sales manager, if you were looking at your sales team and you had 2 team members and one person said, I had 5 calls today, and another guy said, I had 1 call today, you might tend to say, wow, that guy who had 5 calls is really doing his job great. But if you later found out a little bit more into the underlying information and found out that those 5 calls were each 30 seconds, but that other guy had a 1 call that lasted for 2 hours, who actually was doing his job better? Who actually had a more engaged customer? The truth is, it's not necessarily always what your team is doing, but what the customer on the other end is doing that is indicative of deal success. And basing on the fact that we are able to capture all this analytics detail, either from the live presentation itself, or we can even go back and see on that email that I had sent before how much time the person had spent reading the email, we're able to capture all that information and place together in some valuable dashboards that can either be by themselves or enhancing existing dashboards that you already have to help give you a better picture of what's happening from your customer's perspective. Now, why does this matter to a manager? Well, obviously, when it comes to forecasting, their biggest job is making sure that they hit their numbers. And if you're only relying on the things that your team says they're doing, you're missing half of the picture. If I were to come here as a manager and look at what's forecasted to close this quarter based off of what my sales team has predicted, I might be missing a pretty big picture here. All of these things are marked by my team as 70% chance to close or greater. And this is done automatically in Salesforce by choosing the stage. And if all I was doing was taking them at their word, that would actually probably be what most people are doing today. But you're missing out on one big thing, which is how accurate is that forecast? If I were the manager of the rep who's working the Akamai account here, I might be able to come in and say, well, you say this deal is going to close, and I can see that Akamai has actually spent 100 minutes in this past month reading the presentations or in meetings with you. Yeah, maybe that could be better, but at least it's showing that they have taken the commitment, they are interested, they're reading the documents, being on calls with you. That forecast is probably pretty accurately justified. But if I was a manager working the Oracle account here, and he said this deal is definitely going to close, but I come in and I see the Oracle team has not spent more than 15 seconds either in meetings or reading anything he sent over to them, that's going to set off a red flag. Now, it's not necessarily going to say that this deal isn't going to close, but if I'm a manager and I'm figuring out where I need to focus my attention, the reps who are working these accounts that they say they're going to close, but we're not getting that indicator that the actual account is doing anything that's corresponding to what the rep is saying, that's where I want to spend my follow-up time. That's where I can optimally manage my team and really focus on the deals that need my attention. But it's not just that. So obviously forecasting is a big area where getting this big data solution is going to help us out, but it even works on team training. If we were going to look at our reps and their activities, and we can find that a particular rep is very successful in sending out email campaigns and getting people to click them, well, that's what we want to focus on. Oftentimes managers always say we want to find the best performing reps and share their skills with the rest of the team. Well, how do we find our best performing reps? Is it just the people who make the most phone calls, or is it the people who make the most emails or phone calls that actually have someone on the other end of the line? So by finding who our best performing reps are, we can then isolate who they are and share perhaps he's using a template that is just that much more efficient at getting click-throughs, and that's what we want the rest of the team to use as well. A couple extra dashboards I created here that just bounce off some additional information is trying to make sure that your team is doing the right level of what we call tier work. You're getting to the right economic buyer. As I was saying before about the difference between 5 calls that are short and 1 call that's long, well, in the same token, 5 calls that are made to an individual contributor or a low-level manager does not have the same clout as 1 call to a CEO or a high senior VP. When you're trying to look at either your opportunities or your reps' actions, it's important to remember who are they actually talking to on the other line. And by us automatically calculating this information based off the titles entered onto your leads and contacts, we're able to give you a better forecasted picture. Going back again on where you want to focus your efforts. If all the calls have been made into a low-level employee and then this person says this deal is going to close, why do they think that? They haven't gotten to what we call the above-the-line person, the economic buyer, who's going to be making the purchasing decision. And so if you have no time spent talking to them, how can you really be sure that this deal is going to close this quarter? And the final piece I want to wrap around here is on the stage that an action occurred in. Now this was one I developed myself because I thought it was very strange that Salesforce didn't really do a great job of tracking what stage an action occurred in. When you create a report on stages in Salesforce, oftentimes it takes all of those actions and rolls it up into the current stage. So if you had a deal that was closed that had 20 touches and it was closed 1, and another one that had 20 touches that was closed lost, you've lost all the detail of how did you get to where your final stage is. Well, by allowing us to basically, every time we're automatically tracking one of these automatic customer-facing touches, saying, well, this is what stage it is right now, we're able to really gather some valuable information. One, and cycling back all the way to my earlier comment about content Darwinism, we're going to be able to find out what pieces of content or what actions are best at moving a deal along. If every time you're in validation, you send out this document and then all of a sudden you go into negotiation, well, you want to codify that practice and make sure that we do that every single time. Well, conversely, if every time we're sending out this presentation, it leads to a dead deal, let's stop sending out that presentation. If you're not capturing that data in Salesforce and not capturing it from the ClearSlide side of knowing what's being sent out, you're never going to be able to make those connections. But even as a funny corollary here, just to kind of close things out, one thing we found from analyzing this with other organizations as well is this even gives you more insight into your own team. When you're looking at a senior ramped sales rep and they stop doing prospecting work, it's oftentimes an interesting sign that they may be planning on hightailing it out of there. You know, a senior sales rep doesn't need to be told you have to continually develop your pipeline quarter over quarter. They know that they have to be doing pipeline work while they're working on closing their book of sales. And if all of a sudden you see that they stop doing any prospecting work and are only working trying to close their existing book, that's a pretty heavy indicator that they're actually planning on getting out of there and just want to get as big of a bonus as they can before they leave. It's been one of the very funny conjectures that we found both internally and working with our customers that just getting insights into your own team and what they're doing and seeing changes in behavior are a very good way of making sure that your forecast, not only for your customers, but for your own hiring platform, is up to speed with what the accurate state is going on in your company. Now, of course, as I mentioned, this data is not just limited to these dashboards. It can be pulled in with other KPIs you're using in your company today or spread out amongst other relevant dashboards. But just as a good idea of where the big data, the automatic tracking of engagement of what the recipients are doing on the other end can lead to some really valuable conjectures and more accurate forecasts and better training situations for your team. So with that, I think I want to stop right now. I'm very happy, as Chris mentioned, to have a continuing conversation about these dashboards or any other part of the Salesforce and ClearSlide connection. But I'll leave it to Cliff here to wrap us off with some extra questions if any have come in.
Sure. Actually, we'll segue now into handling any questions you and the audience may have. And to do that, you should see a little chat dialog on the right where you can enter any questions that you've got. And Kathy, I'm going to ask you to help monitor that. But in the meantime, just to sort of stage a question that I'd like Dave to answer that I think a lot of people may have is, let's start out by having Dave, if you don't mind, just touching on how ClearSlide for Salesforce can get customized to work with different objects and fields in Salesforce. Often customers have a very unique sales process. How can we take this integration and actually make it work for my Salesforce deployment?
Gotcha. Well, overall, it's a good question, Chris. And so our core integration out of the box deals with mainly core Salesforce fields, your objects, your leads, your accounts, your opportunities, etc. But what we have with our sales engineering team here at ClearSlide is the ability to work with your team and get things customized the way that you want. Do you perhaps use case objects heavily? Well, let's make sure we track objects there. Do you have an additional field, perhaps a call type that you want every person choosing whenever they do an action? Well, sure, just work with us and we'll expose that field into the ClearSlide side so that when they wrap up a meeting, they have to pick a specific call type and push that data as well. It's really as simple as just getting in a meeting with us and figuring out what your needs are, but our team is always happy to work with you to tailor your integration to make sure it meets your company's needs.
Excellent. Thank you, Dave. Another topic that I think a lot of our customers have is, since we do quite a bit of emailing within ClearSlide, many companies either manage sort of a master opt-out list of email addresses in either Salesforce or maybe another marketing automation system. How can ClearSlide take the opt-outs that we capture and synchronize it with other systems?
Cool. Awesome. So, yes, another great question. And obviously the answer there is every tech person's favorite or worst nightmare, which is the API. So we've actually developed a notification API, unsubscribe API, which allows our system to communicate back and forth with other platforms. And of course, Salesforce being the core source of content here, we are finalizing the ability to basically pass unsubscribe information back and forth between Salesforce and ClearSlide, so that if someone unsubscribes on the Salesforce side, well, bam, don't let them email them through ClearSlide. And conversely, if you send out a presentation from ClearSlide and someone unsubscribes, pass that data right over to Salesforce so that those lists are updated and available to be used by both your Salesforce system and any other system that draws its data from Salesforce.
Excellent. Well, Kathy, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't see any questions coming in from the audience. So if you have anything that's top of mind, please send it now, or as you can see, I'm happy to field questions after this webinar. You can see my email address and phone number. But please don't be bashful. We love the engagement with people, even if you're just kicking the tires and thinking about something. So if there's no other questions, I think we're going to give you a few minutes back in your day. And I thank you for joining our webinar. All right, Kathy, I think that's it.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Here's another one. 70% of sales reps don't validate prospect interest during the sales cycle. What this means is that probably quite a few sales organizations are having the reps investing in opportunities that ultimately aren't that interested in the product. So the point being that they may be misusing their time. This is one of the other challenges I'm sure all of you face, is really trying to drive greater productivity with your sales organization, really focusing on the right deals at the right time. And that's a hard challenge, and we'll touch on that a little bit later in this webinar. Okay, my last statistic I'll throw out. 60% of the organizations surveyed by CSO Insights feel the lack of proper tools leads to lengthened sales cycles. Part of what we see going on these days is, to a degree, a lot of other sort of point solutions trying to help the sales team be efficient going through the sales cycle, and this almost backfires. Quite often there's a lack of coordination amongst the tools, and so obviously having sales cycles lengthen is not what anyone wants. You think you're investing in sales tools to shorten the sales cycle, so these are all sort of troubling trends. Okay, now to frame how we view the prospect or interaction gap a little bit more directly, our premise of this webinar is that this is a greater focus for what people need to think about in this digital selling era.
Welcome to the ClearSlide webinar, Solve the Prospect Interaction Gap for Sales. We'll get started in a couple minutes, and to start, we'll conduct a quick sound check. So if you can hear me, please click Ask a Question and type Yes. We'll take 10 seconds to collect your responses. Presenting today from ClearSlide, we have Chris Badger, Senior Director of Partnership Alliances, and David Zahora, Senior Sales Engineer. Feel free to send questions to us throughout the presentation, and our speakers will answer them at the end. And please be sure to set your view to full screen mode by clicking on the icon in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. So Chris and David, I'll let you take it from here.
All right. Thank you, Kathy. Good morning. Good afternoon, everyone. Thrilled you could join our webinar today. And just to frame our agenda, the session will be at the most 45 minutes. I'll start off by framing a few PowerPoint slides about the challenge around prospect interaction gaps and its impact to organizations. We'll talk a little bit about ClearSlide and what some of our customers are doing to solve that problem. But then we'll have my esteemed colleague, David Zahora, actually go through a demonstration of our ClearSlide for Salesforce product, and we'll leave about 5 to 10 minutes at the end for Q&A. So that is the agenda. Now, before I start my slides, I think the premise for the webinar is that to really focus in on getting high-quality prospect and customer insight. So let me drill into a CRM system. I personally have used CRM systems for probably 20 years. And they're fantastic systems. I'll pick on Salesforce, and we're a big partner with Salesforce. It's clearly the #1 market leader here. But most CRM systems really aren't designed to truly help that sales rep connect directly with a prospect and have a communication or make a pitch or try to close that deal. Some of that's done by email, granted, but today usually there's a combination of communication channels you've got to use to really connect directly with your prospects. And of course, it's becoming more and more challenging with prospects being so busy. So this is exactly sort of the conundrum or challenge that a lot of organizations have out there. Now, a lot of the market analyst firms are really starting to note that there's a newer opportunity to really solve this problem. And so very recently, one of the leading analyst firms, Gartner Research, came out with a report advocating the concept of a sales engagement platform. We were actually mentioned in this report, and in fact, we'd be happy to share copies of this report if any of you are interested. But the premise behind Jim Lundy, who's the lead researcher for Aragon, is that companies need to really tie together a lot of the aspects for what today is called a sales engagement platform. So you can see in this little graphic, really bringing together content management, communications, predictive analytics, and even the CRM integration. We're, of course, going to touch on that, but this is sort of a newer concept of really integrating all these together with your CRM system to drive greater efficiencies. Okay, I'm now going to introduce ClearSlide at a high level, and specifically our ClearSlide for Salesforce product. Dave will demonstrate this in a little bit more detail, but at least to introduce what it is that ClearSlide does, we start out by taking the digital content or media that typically a marketing group provides for its sales organization. This may be through either corporate marketing, it could be a field marketing organization, sometimes sales does it for itself, or sales operations team. But clearly, as companies are going after selling digitally, you probably have a variety of digital content types that are used by the salespeople. So what ClearSlide does is organize that to make it super simple for sales reps to communicate using that content through 3 communication channels. So email, over the phone and web, and then in person through mobile applications. Now, as prospects start interacting with the content, this could be through opening up an email and the content in the email, or it could be through a webinar similar to this, where you may have, 10 people joining a discussion. Every organization out there has probably spent a fair amount of money investing in sales tools these days. I'm sure all of you have a CRM system. But despite these investments, we hear a lot about how customers are very challenged with how their reps really interact directly with prospects and get insight about what's going on in that sales cycle. And so to really sort of frame for all of you some of the analyst data in terms of how big this problem is, I've got a couple slides that frame some statistics that I think are pretty interesting. They're illuminating about how big this challenge is these days. So here's one: 94% of sales leaders lack confidence in their activity data. So this is coming from Forrester Research, and it's a briefing they did a year or two ago with a lot of their organizations that they deal with. So that's pretty staggering. Obviously, activity data is pretty critical for helping a sales organization know what's really going on from a field perspective. So here's another one: 65% of salespeople and their time spent is on non-selling activity. This is data coming from Accenture and CSO Insights. We'd like to think our sales organizations are all, for the most part, selling, but a number like this is pretty shocking in terms of, the distractions, if you will, that go on for what salespeople today have to go through.